Hello everybody, Tyrone the God 3 here. And with Dragon Ball Super coming to a close with the Tournament of Power saga, basically being the ending saga of Dragon Ball Super, or at least that's what it looks like for now, I've decided to look back at a couple of things. Now, a lot of you all already know my feelings towards Dragon Ball Super, and they're usually not positive for the most part, with the exception being like the soundtrack, I guess. But Dragon Ball Super has a bad habit of what I like to call an anime that doesn't really leave much resolution to an arc at the end of it. And the reason of that being is mostly because when a saga is over, there's very lackluster results. And I think the Tournament of Power is a big example of this. Now, the reason I pointed out the Tournament of Power particularly is because the other sagas do at least bring something to the table where I feel like the Tournament of Power literally only existed for very minuscule reasons towards the plot of Dragon Ball itself. When I talk about Dragon Ball, I talk about Dragon Ball as a whole, considering the fact that Dragon Ball Super decides to take place in the middle of Dragon Ball Z's timeline. Basically, everything that happens in Dragon Ball Super happens before Goku meets up with Oob in the final episode of Dragon Ball Z. So I kind of have no choice but to really compare Dragon Ball Super to Dragon Ball Z, and by extension, Dragon Ball. But I want to talk about something known as story arc and character arc. A lot of people may not know what I'm talking about here, but when an anime or just any form of fiction goes through a story arc or a character arc, essentially what happens is that the story or character within the story starts off as something and ends through some form of growth or development or damage or anything like that. This can happen in anything: comedies, tragedies, epics, anything where the character and the story both go through something known as an arc. What are the ending results of the events that have taken place? What has been affected? What is the overall plot, and why is the plot important from start to finish? Now, the reason I picked out the Tournament of Power is because there's plenty of examples of anime who have done tournaments right. And what I mean by this is where a tournament arc is usually an arc that's not meant to be taken as seriously as other arcs, considering that it's just sort of an excuse for characters to basically be pit up against each other. Characters that you would normally not see fighting off against each other in a battle royale, winner take all type of situation. The Tournament of Power is basically the biggest example I can think of, basically all the fighters and Dragon Ball getting together for one giant brawl. Now, tournaments have been used in other anime before, but they've been used as a device in order to increase the story in some way, shape, or form, not just in the terms of the plot, but the characters themselves. Tournaments normally have a chance to focus on the characters themselves, normally because those characters are pit up against each other in close hand combat. It's a way to get intimate between two characters, and eternal conflict will allow them to grow even further. One of the older shows in anime, known as Yu Yu Hakusho, actually does a really good job of this. Here's how Team Urameshi starts off the Demon Tournament. Here's how it ends. You notice the dramatic change that they go through with the entire arc. It makes you ask, how did it come to this? Well, obviously the story does a good job of portraying what happens between Yusuke, Kuwabara, Kurama, Hiei, Genkai, and all the other characters, and everything that took place in the conflicts that they had to go through, the growth and character development. The story within itself got changed as well, because the Demon Tournament started off as just a regular tournament with a ring, and then by the time it's over, it's reduced to basically rubble. Just because of the weight of the plot, the antagonists, the fights, the conflicts that took place within the entire tournament. Each of the characters have grown. Genkai's no longer living, but obviously things have changed since then. It's it's story progression like that that actually shows what the characters have gone through, and them leaving out of story, coming out a different person than when they came in. This definitely causes us to fully grasp and absorb all of the events that took place within that story, and that's why this tournament was so important. Another example of this is on Hunter x Hunter, where Gon and Killua enter the Heaven's Arena tournament. What do you know? I just realized both of the anime examples I'm giving are made by the same person. Good job, Tagashi. Anyway, When Gon and Killua enter the Heaven's Arena tournament, they have no idea what Nin even is, and they come out basically being mastered in Nin to a point where they can fully utilize it in their fights. They've made themselves a lot stronger, and they've learned the precipice of what most fights in Hunter x Hunter are going to be now that they've mastered this type of power. Now we get to see why those stronger characters in Hunter x Hunter were so strong in the first place, because they were able to fully utilize these abilities and take advantage of a lot of the fighters in the previous story arcs because they were so strong. And now Gon and Killua have gained that strength too and become that much closer to coming closer to fighting off against the very powerful opponents that we saw at the beginning of the story, like the Phantom Troop and several other characters like Hisoka and others. So when I gave examples of tournaments that increase characters and the progression through the arcs and stories, I don't want to just use examples from other anime. I'll go ahead and use examples from the very same anime that Dragon Ball Super is getting its source material from, Dragon Ball. So when Dragon Ball starts off, Dragon Ball actually has a lot of tournament arcs, 3 of them to be exact. And all 3 of these tournaments have very different results that take place, and the way they end basically changes the way the characters are as a whole. In the first tournament, Master Roshi enters the tournament as Jackie Chun specifically so that he can defeat Goku and Krillin. He wants to do this so that he can teach the boys that losing gives them an initiative to want to be stronger, and it does just that. Goku has the will to become stronger, and thus he chooses to search for the Dragon Balls as a form of training, which kicks off the Red Ribbon Army saga. So if it weren't for Jackie Chun entering the tournament and that tournament happening and Goku losing, Goku comes out of the tournament much different than the way he came in, thinking he was super strong because of the training that he received from Master Roshi, and leaving out learning that he still has a long way to go before he can reach his max power and be the greatest fighter. The second tournament that happens takes place after the Red Ribbon Army saga and deals with Tien, Shinhan, and Chaozu. Introduction to 2 new characters. Now, when this tournament does take place, Tien and Chaozu start off as very villainous characters, and it ends with Tien having a change of heart and bettering himself as a warrior. Because, yeah, he did win the tournament, but he just barely won it because Goku gave him such a hard time. And he only won because of a technicality. So this drives Tien to actually want to become stronger, and thus he allies with Goku, and they all end up working together and becoming stronger for future conflicts afterwards, more noticeably the King Piccolo saga. Once the third tournament rolls in, a lot of growth happens specifically on Goku's end, because this is the last tournament that Goku enters in Dragon Ball. Goku basically enters this tournament with all of this power that he gained from Kami, but he leaves the tournament victorious over Piccolo Jr. The tournament is in shambles. He finally becomes the world's strongest under the heavens, which is a great ending to his character arc, considering the fact that he lost all the tournaments prior, and he even leaves out with a wife. Yeah, he gets married in that entire tournament. So Goku starts off the tournament as this regular dude with souped up power, and he leaves out a hero, a champion, and a husband. And the world isn't destroyed. I guess that's a plus too. But overall, this means that characters can develop and become different characters at the end of a conflict, at the end of an arc. Now, why am I saying all this? Well, mostly because when I look at Dragon Ball Super and its Tournament of Power, I see that only a few changes have been made to the characters and their development as characters and the story within itself. Now, obviously, the story arc isn't over yet, but looking on what we know right now, look at basically what everybody's gone through. Not much of the characters have really gained anything out of this. Most of the characters that left this tournament are pretty much leaving the tournament the exact same way they came in. None of these characters have gotten any stronger. None of these characters have gained any new forms or anything. The only characters that have gone through these form changes are characters from Universe 6. and it's mostly just the Saiyans. Kaba leaves the tournament being able to turn Super Saiyan 2, but it's short lived because he ends up getting eliminated shortly after. Kale and Khalifa go through the most growth in this entire tournament, but that's only because the show needed them to grow specifically so they could be strong enough to give Goku a run for his money so that he can fight off against them in Ultra Instinct and completely shatter them. So in other words, these two girls only got strong enough as plot devices to make Goku strong enough to trump them later, which is pretty pathetic if you ask me. Because this means that after this tournament, they're not really going to have much impact. They gained all these Super Saiyan transformations and power ups and abilities within the span of about 2 hours. And there's not really much to show for it afterwards because Universe 6 characters don't get nearly as much screen time and development as Universe 7. And Universe 7 doesn't get a lot, so that's really saying something. Oh yeah, I guess we could say that Android 17 died in this tournament. But honestly, I feel like this was just a cheap ploy to make us as the audience feel sorry and sad for what happened. But this really doesn't work that well considering that Android 17, prior to this saga, was missing for basically hundreds of episodes of Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super. So, excuse me if I don't feel as sorry for Android 17 dying as most people naturally would. It's just the character wasn't utilized enough for me to really believe in his death as a way to emotionally affect me as a person. So it kind of just felt like they needed to pick somebody off real fast. And they chose 17 because, why not? He's disposable, right? So, yeah, none of the characters gain anything. And even in sagas that have nothing to do with tournaments, this showed that characters could develop out of the arcs that they were in. And the Saiyan saga ends with basically a lot of the cast dying, which gives them the initiative to want to go to Planet Namek to bring them all back and basically fix how things have gone out. But that just winds up with them fighting off Frieza in the Planet Namek saga, and all of that ends with Goku turning Super Saiyan. It ends with Vegeta sort of allying up with the Z Warriors, but he's still kind of evil. And it ends with Krillin dying. All of these results end that affect the characters personally, and thus we continue the story even further because there's still loose ends to tie up. At the end of the Cell saga, we see that Vegeta is a lot more of a father figure towards Trunks. We see that Gohan has finally taken the throne as the hero of planet Earth, and Goku has decided that he must pass the torch, and thus he's decided to die. Krillin has gained a relationship with Android 18, though it doesn't develop until the Buu saga. And we also see that other characters have basically made peace with what has happened, and Trunks finally gets rid of the androids. So the ending result, the closing to all of these results that happen due to this arc, shows that each of these characters have developed and gotten stronger in some way, shape, or form. Even the Majin Buu saga followed it to some degree. So when I look at the Tournament of Power, I can't help but notice that the only thing that was really gained out of this was that Vegeta gained a new transformation, which is Super Saiyan Royal Blue, which is basically just a advanced version of Super Saiyan Blue. And then Goku gained Ultra Instinct and Ultra Instinct Mastered. So honestly, all they did was just give Goku and Vegeta 2 new transformations. The rest of the characters didn't gain anything out of this. 17 died for almost no reason. And that's it. That's basically all that looks like the closing's going to be. And yes, we know Goku or Frieza or whoever is around is going to use the Super Dragon Balls for some obscure reason that we won't know yet. But it feels like with the series coming to a close, there's not really much brevity behind everything that took place within Dragon Ball Super in terms of this arc. And that can even be said for the arc prior that also had another tournament, which was the Universe 6/Universe 7 tournament, which really only ended in Goku being able to transform Kaioken Blue. So it's like, yay, Goku gained a new form. But what else was gained? Oh, I guess Kaba turned Super Saiyan. Okay, whatever. It's just, it doesn't feel like that tournament had a lasting effect on any of the characters. Good stories tell a story that starts with something simple and ends with a large amount of chaos that happens. Good stories should have you leaving a completely different person than the way you came into something. Maybe you had the mindset of this, but by the time the story's over, you have the mindset of this. Sometimes good stories can make you even feel sorry for the villain that ends up dying at the end, mostly because of the way the story took place and the way the story told its tale. It's things like this. It's elements like this that make for a good story, and that's one of the reasons I complain about Dragon Ball Super so much, is just because it doesn't know how to do that. These are fundamentals that even Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z could pick up, so why can't Super do it? Super is made in a time that was much deeper, had much more resources and references and things to research on. In the future, we're supposed to develop and adapt and grow, not go backwards. And that's what Dragon Ball Super unfortunately feels like. Feels like it's gone backwards. But with that said, that's my 2 cents. What are your thoughts? Do you believe the Tournament of Power is a good arc in the way it starts and concludes? Do you think there hasn't been really any change for real except making the Saiyans in the saga have new transformations? Leave your thoughts in the comment sections, and I'll see you all then, everybody. Tyrone the God 3 out.